Hey guys, what's up? JR here from CLP Audio, your grumpy sound guy. I had some time to burn here today while on vacation in Ocean City, Maryland, at my favorite beach in the whole wide world. There's other beaches nicer, but for me, this is home. I had promised that I was going to do a video on passive speakers versus active or powered speakers. So here we are. Pitter patter, let's get at her. Now this is a very controversial subject for a lot of guys, because active guys will have the argument of, man, I'm tired of hauling an amp rack around, passive stuff is old school, this is the future, this is, blah, 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 this is, latest, greatest breaking technology. And I guess I should probably preempt this whole conversation with, I'm basically talking about low-end line array, like middle market line array stuff, like some of the HDL20 type stuff, RCF. JBL just came out with a new SRX 900 series, which is now in line array form. And then all of the point source stuff, because we're always talking middle market on this channel. It's always, your local club to your county fair to your community park concert series type thing. This is not a pro touring conversation whatsoever. When you get up into pro touring powered stuff, it's a whole nother conversation, because some of that stuff is like really seriously incredible. Some of the lower end stuff is not, but guys that are bumping around downtown DC and Baltimore doing corporate stuff, cheap, middle of the road, powered stuff is probably the way to go. You can fit it all in the back of your SUV. You can show up at a gig with, two tops and two single 18 subs for front of house, and 4 powered wedges, for monitors. Most of the bands working that corporate scene now are ears, so you don't even need that. And an X32 rack, and shoot, man, you're off to the races. You're making legit money and doing real well at it. But I don't think that represents a huge part of the market. I think it represents probably 25 or 30% of the market. So yeah. So I'm going to really be talking more about the clubs, the county fairs kind of thing. I've seen DJs literally stack up a wall of like QSC powered stuff, with, man, I don't even know, like 12 single 18 subs per side or some kind of crazy stuff like that. And I didn't hear it. It looked like a mess to me, but just from the pictures. But I would imagine it was pretty loud, and probably had a lot of mid-range. And God only knows what the bottom end was like with all that stuff stacked up on top of each other. Maybe it was cool, maybe it wasn't. Maybe I'm a proponent of, it's always the Indian and not the Arrow. So if you get the right hands behind a rig like that, you might be able to do something with it. It's not an avenue I would go down. Excuse me. It's not something that I would do, because I see a whole bunch of money. I mean, powered stuff's not cheap, man. I see a whole bunch of money sitting there, and it's, I don't know, man. It's not where I would go. But if you are a traveling, regionally traveling band, or even locally traveling band, who's looking to put together a nice, simple little rig to cover rooms under 300 people, then, that QSC K12, I think the new sub is what, the KS 118 or something. It replaced the KW 118. I heard a couple of those not long ago and was impressed. For single 18s, man, they were pounding. But again, it was in a room of about 150 or 200 people. The room was about 24 by 24. It wasn't a huge room or anything. But in that room, it sounded good. Another rig like that is the turbo rig. The IQ or something, I think it is, or whatever. I'm not an expert on that stuff, because I don't use hardly any of that powered stuff. The only powered speakers that I personally own was I was picking up a couple corporate gigs in downtown DC and really could use some easy way to get all my gear in the back of my truck instead of having to take a trailer. Because when you go into inner city, there's nowhere to park. You got to be able to get into a parking garage, you know, and that kind of thing. And you can't do that with a trailer. So I did break down for the first time in many years, and I bought 4 of the Mackie SRM 450s because they were the least expensive but the most tolerable frequency response. And most of the stuff that I will be using it for will probably either be fill monitor stuff in a scenario where everybody's on ears except for the lead singer or something like that. I'll put a couple of them up for him. Excuse me. And I've done that before. Or I just use it for talking heads gigs where it's just public address, you know, so it'll work fine for that stuff. Other than that, all my other gear is passive. And let me talk about that for a second. The reason why I'm passive is the components in the passive stuff, and I'm going to speak to what I believe to be the quintessential middle market working horse system that you can go anywhere in the country and find a guy like me using a rig like this as a B rig for anything under, you know, 2,000 people or something. You know, maybe 1,500, 2,000 people outside, bigger rooms, and it's really scalable down to smaller rooms too. And that is the now discontinued JBL SRX line or the STX line, passive stuff. We're not talking about the SRX 800 series that was active and now the new line array 900 series that is active. We're talking about the SRX and STX line of JBL. This was a working man's rig. You know, it is not my favorite sounding rig. I'm an EAW guy. I like EAW. My outdoor rig for big shows is a big EAW KF850, SB850 Z, you know, setup, and that works great for, you know, 5,000-6,000 people or something like that or whatever. But you know, I've gotten more return on investment on this goofy little JBL rig. Let me give you some backstory. When I left my last house rig, I had positioned COP Audio to predominantly do bigger outdoor stuff, you know, county fairs, carnivals, still middle market, but the upper echelon of middle market, you know, and compete with that. Well, then COVID happened, you know, and when COVID happened, that whole scene disappeared, and really the only thing that was doing anything was the club scene, you know, because a lot of the clubs that I do is outdoor venues. They're on the water, you know, stuff like that. Wineries, breweries, you know, farm markets that all do, you know, outdoor concerts all summer long. So I went and I bought a JBL SRX, you know, rig. And it has done nothing but make me money since. I originally started off with a pair of 728 SRX 728s, killer subs, really great industry standard subs. And then a pair of 715 tops SRX, which is just a 15 and a horn, 3-inch horn. And I put those up on sticks, and man, that was my rig for the first 2 years, or the first year, first year and a half or so, like 2020 and 2021. So yeah, maybe 2 years. And then they was doing so well, and I was doing so well financially, I sold the 728s and went and bought 2 pair of the STX 828s, which has a 4-inch, you know, dual voice coil driver in it, to where the 728s had 3-inch Neo drivers in them. So the STXs are a little more efficient power-wise. They're a little bit louder. You know, I think they're a dB or 2 louder, which on low end, you know, that it makes a big difference. Still using the 715s most of the time on sticks and clubs because they're just, you know, totally, you know, appropriate for that. They get plenty loud, you know, and see, that's the That's the big separator between the men and the boys in this conversation, is that how loud will it get without distorting, without, starting to sound like mush, get real mid-rangey, or just kind of get wonky. And the SRX 715s will get up to about 132 or 4 dB or something. I also, at the same time, when I bought the STX 828 subs, I bought a pair of SRX 722 tops to do double stack, bigger outdoor budget gigs. Not everybody has, $6,000 or $7,000 to hire the big 850 EAW rig, and a lot of times it's just not necessary. So I needed a rig somewhere in between the club rig and the big outdoor rig. So I needed like a B outdoor rig. The club rig is really kind of a C rig. So that would be 2 double-18 STX 828s and 2 SRX 722 tops. And the 722s have 2 12s in it and a 4-inch horn. So they're much more efficient outside, and I mean they work great, and it'll cover a crowd up to, I'd say 2,500, 3,000 people or something like that, in a city park or something or whatever, anything over that, and you really should go with the 850 rig, but nevertheless, JBL, I think sounds like JBL. Their bottom end, no one will argue about the bottom end stuff. The bottom end thumps, it's nice. Gets it done. I think most people will agree that JBL's bottom end is as good as just about anybody else's. But their mid and high range reproduction is where you kind of notice the difference. I know the newer VTX line array, Pro Touring grade stuff, they redid all the voicing in those boxes, different components, and I've heard that rig, and it actually sounds really good. It's for a budget touring line array rig, it is actually not bad. I would probably still go with an RCF, HDL 30A, because I just think that it sounds better in the high end. JBL tends to get a little weird up top, it does. It tends to get a little harsh in the mid, like around 630, 800, and get a little bright up around 4 to 8K or something like that. So if you understand all that and you can work your way around that like I do, because I've been using this SRX stuff for decades, then you can really get a lot of bang for your buck. And I am regularly head-to-head against guys that have powered rigs of all shapes, forms, and fashions, and never have a problem, at the very least, holding my own or sounding better, So it is a great working man's rig. I cannot recommend that rig enough for someone who just wants to buy stuff that will last. That's the other thing. These plastic, powered active boxes, man, they're good for like 5 or 6 years, maybe 8 years or something. I've seen most of them take a poop within the first 3 to 5 years, so, that's to be considered too. And, while you're having that conversation, you have to recognize the fact that there are SRX JBL rigs out there that have been out there for probably 20 years, 25 years, that have never had a driver replaced in them, are still pounding and still getting it done. If you want to talk about return on investment, you cannot beat that line of speakers. So a lot of guys ask me, they're like, well, JR, you're an EAW guy. I'm technically an EAW dealer, and that sort of thing. Why don't you go with EAW stuff? Well, honestly, I really haven't. And, EAW, if you're listening, man, and want to invite me up and give me a demo of a bunch of stuff, hey, man, I'd be glad to do that. But I haven't found anything that puts out that kind of volume and that kind of low-end punch for this kind of money. Because, you can pick up, one pair of 728s for about $1,600 or $1,800. Maybe $2,000 if they're in super good shape and you can't find any place else. But that's a pair of passive subs, and you can pick up a pair of those 715 tops you know, for probably $1,000-$1,200 for the pair. So you're into worst case scenario, you're into 2 subs and 2 tops for front of house for what, $3,200, something like that. I mean, that's really hard to beat, you know. And I know, excuse me, I just had breakfast, so you got to work with me here. So then you got to ask yourself, well, you know, well, JR, and then we got to power it, and I got to have a crossover or something like that or whatever and all that kind of stuff. Look, if you're someone who doesn't understand how to do system design and tech and all that kind of stuff, hey, man, by all means, you know, check out, you know, go buy the active stuff and make the best of it, you know. But if you're someone who's enjoys technology and will at least take the chance to get in there and try to make your way through that, you know, you can get a Drive Rack 260, you know, that's great. Honestly, on my rig, and this is going to blow your mind, but I aux feed my subs, so I really don't have to use a crossover at all. You know, I roll off the bottom end on my tops at about 40 or 50 hertz, you know, and leave the rest of the tops go. Because with the curve, the Q of how it's rolled off, it's probably not getting anything under about, you know, 60, 65 hertz or something like that. And those boxes can produce that. But you're not going to pound a bunch of that into those top boxes. And I'm doing that on the M32, you know, and then the sub out for, you know, my subs, I do just the opposite. You know, I roll the mid and high off down to about, I don't know, I think I have it set at about 80 hertz, but I do have an analog crossover in my amp rack for that aux sub. So, and I think it's crossed over at about 70 hertz or something like that, 60, 70 hertz. The kick is at 50, you know, so you want that. The low end of the bass guitar is around 100 hertz, 150 hertz, 250 for the low mid, 1K in a bass guitar is a tone, and then like 3K is fret noise and, you know, pick noise, you know, that sort of thing. So, I mean, you could simplify your setup that way. You know, my club rig is just exactly that. I have that, I'm using 1 channel of a 2-channel DBX analog compressor, crossover, and I'm just running my aux line through 1 channel of that and running that into my sub amp. And, you know, the tops, I'm just rolling off the bottom end. And I mean, it works fabulously. And that's as simple and as easy of a system as you can get. Yeah, the power amps can be a little expensive, but if you buy good power amps, you know, they'll last you for 20 years too, you know. I like the Crown XTI stuff. I personally have some lab grouping stuff, but I have some lab grouping stuff because it's kind of held over from, you know, the 850 rig and some of the stuff I was trying to do with the outdoor concert stuff. My amp rack for my club rig is basically my monitor / sub rack for the 850 rig. I have another amp rack with a Drive Rack 260 in it that does the 3-way KF 850 tops for outside. But that's a whole nother conversation. So I said all that, trying to help you out. Now, look, I know there's other passive stuff out there that's great. Some of the EV stuff is cool. You know, the old, you know, QRX stuff was definitely legitimate. The LA EAW stuff is not bad, but the thing I like about the SRX stuff is it's light and it's easy to carry around, and I don't struggle to get it in and out of the club by myself. I don't struggle to stack the speakers by myself. Now, I'm a big guy, but still at the same time, you know, I don't want to be lugging around any more weight than I absolutely have to clubs and county fairs and stuff like that. You know, when you're doing bigger stuff, well, that is whatever it is, you know, but yeah, that's kind of why I'm a passive guy. That's kind of why I like passive stuff, is because of that. It's light, it's easy to move around, it gets the job done, and it lasts a long, long time. So, you know, the stuff that I bought over last winter, that those STX subs and those SRX 722s, man, I paid for them in the first month I was out, you know, working this year. So it's all profit now, you know, from here forward. And that stuff will last forever, you know. So that's what I'm going to keep throwing up and keep doing, you know, my stuff. Now, again, like I said, if you don't get all the system tech stuff and that intimidates you, by all means. I will say this: the powered stuff is getting better and better. I think the budget line array stuff is getting better. I still don't think it's great. Now, the problem with that stuff is, like, you take the HDL20. HDL20 is a fine box for a 210 in a two-way box. You know what I'm saying? I've installed them in churches before and that sort of thing. It's a groovy box, sounds good, for the most part, but it takes 3 of those boxes to be as loud as one of my KF850s. And point source is always going to sound warmer just because of the nature of the design. Granted, it's not going to throw as far. You're going to get 80 or 100 feet out of it, and then you're going to start losing volume after that, to where line array is designed to throw loud, long. It stays loud for a long period of time, but it also, you kind of give something up along the way. You know what I'm saying? You kind of give up some of the warmth and body. You talk to some older cats that came from the point source era, they'll tell you the same thing. They'll tell you the exact same thing. It just is what it is. But is anyone going to complain? Here's where we get to the reality of all this. Is anyone going to complain? Like, I bellyache and complain about my JBL rig sounding like JBL all the time because I don't really dig it. I think it's okay. I think it's decent. Don't get me wrong. The bottom end's legit. But I'm always having to fight and carve my way around, the JBL inadequacies, of mid and high range. But it's doable and it's workable, and I've never once had anyone complain about it. My clients love it. They love the price point, that I can offer them with that. And it just gets the job done week after week after week after week. If a component breaks, the components are easy to find because there's a bazillion of them out there, I don't have to, run an electrical line and a speaker line to each box. That's kind of a pain in the rear end with active stuff. I'm dropping AC power on all 4 corners of the stage, and in the center of the stage, up and down stage. Anyways, so it's not like the power's not there, but it's just this, in my mind, it's this idea of having to run another cable and blah blah blah. Plus, the stuff really just doesn't hold up that great to the rigors of the road. If you're out here doing 150 shows a year like I am, and you're packing and unpacking, sometimes 3 and 4 times a week, man, that's hard on gear. Even if you spend another $600 on ATA flight cases for your powered stuff, it's still hard on it, man. It just is. One powered plastic box that I do like is the QSC KLA. I think it's a decent sounding box. Again, it's not knocking my socks off, but I think it sounds as good or better maybe even than the HDL20. I like 3-way boxes. I've always been a fan of 3-way boxes. And that's probably the thing that drives me crazy the most with the JBL stuff is their 2-way boxes. Even the 212 and a horn, it's still a 2-way box. It's, you got a 2-way crossover in there, to where the EAW stuff tends to be 3-way. And 3-way boxes have a little better snare drum and vocal reproduction, piano reproduction, keyboard reproduction, that sort of thing. And it just feels better to me. It always does, So that's why I like the HDL30A, because it's a 3-way box and it's a night and day different box, than the HDL20. And I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of other active stuff. I know EV has like 4 or 5 different lines of active stuff. QSC seems to be the big one on the block right now. They're kind of the king of the hill as far as the active stuff is concerned. I think Mackie still makes decent stuff, that way. Like I said, I bought 4 of the SRM 450s for my stuff, put covers on them, and off we go. Now, they don't get a lot of time because I use the passive stuff most of the time, but they have their place, man. Don't get mad at me if I didn't mention your stuff. I like the turbo stuff. I think the turbo stuff sounds okay. All those plastic boxes, to me, sound like plastic boxes. There's no replacement for, you know, birch plywood. There's just not. Or even like pine plywood. I'll even take plywood made out of pine. Like a lot of the JBL boxes, I think, are made out of pine. I don't think they're birch. They may have a couple plies of birch in them. I don't know. They look really cool when you open them up. They're nice plywood, strong boxes, but they're not super, super heavy like Baltic birch can be. So I suspect they have some poplar or pine or something in there with maybe a ply or two of birch or whatever. Nevertheless, my wooden JBL boxes sound better than the plastic active boxes by Brand X. Name the brand. You know what I mean? I just like wood. You know, I just think wood sounds better. I think wood has always sounded better. Now, when you get into the higher end stuff, L Acoustics, D&B, you know, some of those guys, it's freaking no holds barred then. You know, they've done the rocket science to figure that stuff out. And for the most part, I think some of those arrays that have 6-inch drivers in them, they throw and they're loud and all that, but they still ain't quite as fat as I would like them to be. And I've run a handful of L Acoustics, Cura rigs, you know, and that sort of thing. So it's, you know, it's cool. It's very cool, you know. I just really dig the point source stuff. I'm kind of an old school guy that way. If you're not, that's okay. Don't get mad at me. I'm just giving you my opinion, and that's just kind of where it's at. So, with all that being said, would you please like and subscribe to this channel? Would you please share it on social media with your friends, and you know, help me build this thing up and try to get this information out to people who really need it. You know, even if you're somebody who none of this is new news to you, you totally get it. That's okay too. You know, 100%. I welcome you guys. I welcome your comments. I don't know everything. You know, I don't pretend to know everything. I've been in the business 30 years. I think I got a pretty good handle, at least on what I do. But man, I'm always open to other suggestions, and I always love hearing your opinions. Hit me in the comment section, you know. I love hearing, you know, what you have to bring to the table, your different viewpoints on things, and maybe your experiences with active versus passive, you know, speakers, or any of the other subjects that we've talked about here. You know, hit me up, and then go over to the TikTok channel, Grumpy Sound Guy on TikTok, and you know, hit the heart on that and subscribe to my channel as well. CLP Audio is all over socials. You know, it's Instagram and Facebook. Be sure to, you know, check me out there, and check out the swag store. I had a whole bunch of you people, you know, burn me up wanting, you know, t-shirts and Grumpy Sound Guy, you know, stuff. We now have that. And the address is clpswagstore.com, clpswagstore.com. So, yeah, go over there, check that out. Sales have actually been pretty good over there, you know. And I'm not making a bunch of money off of it. I'm really just, I had to pay a bunch of money to create it, so it'll probably be a while before I even can show a profit on anything there. But there's a bunch of cool, crazy stuff over there. Don't Suck is a big t-shirt that everyone loves. It seems to get into. Got a one that says Friends in Low Places with a bass clef to give to all your bass player buddies, or even tuba players in your marching band. There's all kinds of goofy stuff over there. Stage plots. I think there's a diagram to an XLR to 1/8-inch connector t-shirt, which can be handy for some of you DJs. Tons of stuff, and then all kinds of CLP Audio swag. If you want to, you know, show your support to CLP Audio, I'm just a small company here in the Mid-Atlantic, you know, doing my thing with a bunch of 1099 guys, and you know, making the best of the business. I'm in the trenches with the rest of you. I am no better than anybody else. I try to stay humble, and I will freely give you whatever knowledge I have as easily as it has been given to me. Some of it didn't come so easy. Some of it I had to learn the hard way, but let me save you that. You know, hit me up and I will gladly help you out. My inbox is regularly blown up with guys wanting more specifics on, like when we did the Wi-Fi mixing video, a bunch of guys hit me up wanting to know specific points of access, devices to buy, how to configure their systems, and, you know, stuff like that. So, you know, I'm here. I help whenever I can, whenever I have time. I try to answer all those messages. You know, I'm very personable, very approachable, very reachable. You know, you can search J.R. Everhart and find me, find my personal profile on Facebook and Instagram, and all kinds of cool stuff there. I share the TikTok videos to the J.R. Everhart Instagram and Facebook pages. I occasionally will put some up on the CLP audio pages to kind of get some traffic that way as well. But yeah, help me out. Let's just try to build this thing into a co-op where we could all just kind of help each other and make the world a better place, one mix at a time.